Robinson Crusoe's early years and defiance. The novel begins with Robinson Crusoe, a young man born in 1632 in York, England. Crusoe's father, a wealthy middle-class man, advises him to live a quiet life, neither seeking wealth nor indulging in poverty, but finding contentment in the middle station of life. However, Crusoe's restless nature drives him to rebel against this advice. His father, in an emotional plea, warns him that pursuing a life of adventure will bring nothing but hardship and sorrow. Crusoe's mother, too, tries to dissuade him, asking him to honor his father's wishes. Despite their efforts, Crusoe is determined to carve out a different path for himself, one marked by adventure and the excitement of the unknown. Crusoe's defiance of his father is not just a youthful rebellion. It also symbolizes a deeper desire for independence and self-determination, traits that will shape much of his journey. His first sea voyage sets the tone for the difficulties ahead. The ship he embarks on encounters a ferocious storm, nearly leading to disaster. Crusoe, filled with fear and regret, resolves to return to his father's house. However, when the storm subsides and his immediate danger is over, his determination to stay at sea returns with full force. The temptation of adventure and wealth proves too strong. Crusoe's captivity and escape. On his second voyage, Crusoe experiences a more serious misfortune. He is captured by Moorish pirates and enslaved in North Africa. This period of his life, spent as a slave in Morocco, reflects an early experience of isolation and powerlessness, which foreshadows his later life on the deserted island. However, even in captivity, Crusoe's resourcefulness and determination to be free never falter. After 2 years of enslavement, Crusoe seizes an opportunity to escape. His master sends him and another young slave, Shuri, out to sea on a fishing expedition. Crusoe cleverly manages to sail away, and with Shuri's help, navigates along the African coast. Eventually, they are rescued by a Portuguese ship bound for Brazil. This period in Crusoe's life highlights not only his survival instincts, but also his growing willingness to compromise. He sells Shuri to the Portuguese captain, a decision that foreshadows his later complicity in the slave trade, demonstrating the moral ambiguities Crusoe faces throughout his life. The life of a plantation owner. Crusoe arrives in Brazil, where he begins to establish a new life as a plantation owner. His success as a planter comes swiftly, and within a few years, Crusoe has accumulated wealth. This phase of his life offers him a taste of the stability and prosperity his father once envisioned for him. However, despite his financial success, Crusoe's longing for adventure persists. When fellow plantation owners propose a voyage to Africa to acquire slaves for their plantations, Crusoe eagerly agrees. This decision, motivated by both greed and a desire for more excitement, ultimately leads to his downfall. The fateful shipwreck. Crusoe's voyage to Africa is interrupted by disaster. His ship encounters a violent storm, and he is shipwrecked on an uninhabited island. The crew perishes, leaving Crusoe as the sole survivor. Stranded and completely alone, Crusoe is initially overwhelmed by fear and despair. As he surveys his new surroundings, the weight of his isolation bears down on him. He realizes that rescue may never come, and that his survival depends entirely on his ability to adapt to the island's harsh environment. Crusoe's immediate response is to salvage what he can from the wrecked ship. He manages to recover tools, guns, gunpowder, food, and other essential supplies. He also takes several books, including a Bible, which will play a crucial role in his spiritual development during his time on the island. With these supplies, Crusoe begins the long, painstaking process of survival. His initial efforts are focused on building a secure shelter to protect himself from the elements and any potential threats, such as wild animals or hostile natives. He constructs a fortified home on the island, which he refers to as his castle, using the tools he salvaged from the shipwreck. Adapting to island life. As time passes, Crusoe becomes increasingly adept at using the island's resources to sustain himself. He learns how to hunt wild game, fish, and gather fruits. He also begins farming, planting the barley and rice seeds he salvaged from the ship. The crops he grows become essential to his long-term survival as he begins to produce his own food. Crusoe even manages to domesticate wild goats, which provide him with a steady supply of milk, cheese, and meat. Over the years, he expands his kingdom, building more enclosures, furniture, and even crafting pottery. Despite his success in mastering the island's resources, Crusoe's loneliness is profound. To cope with the isolation, he keeps a journal, meticulously documenting his daily activities and his thoughts. The act of writing helps him maintain his sense of identity and purpose, even as years pass without any sign of rescue. He marks the passing of time by carving notches into a wooden cross, symbolizing both his growing faith and the relentless passage of time. Spiritual reflection and growth. Crusoe's years on the island also lead to a deepening of his religious faith. In his solitude, Crusoe has ample time to reflect on his past sins and his disobedience to his father. He begins to see his shipwreck and isolation as a form of divine punishment for his earlier life of recklessness and greed. This spiritual crisis becomes a turning point in the novel, as Crusoe repents and turns to God for comfort. He begins reading the Bible regularly, praying and seeking redemption. His newfound faith becomes a crucial source of strength, helping him endure the physical and emotional challenges of island life. Crusoe's spiritual journey is one of the central themes of the novel. His reflections on sin, repentance, and divine providence offer a window into the mindset of 18th century Protestantism, with its emphasis on individual responsibility, self-examination, and the belief in God's guiding hand in human affairs. The discovery of the footprint and the cannibals. After 15 years of living alone, Crusoe makes a shocking and terrifying discovery, a single human footprint in the sand. This discovery shatters the relative peace he has achieved on the island and fills him with fear. Crusoe immediately suspects that the footprint belongs to one of the cannibals who occasionally visit the island to conduct their rituals. The fear of being discovered by these savage tribes consumes him, and he becomes even more vigilant. He fortifies his dwelling further, setting traps and hiding his movements to avoid detection. For 2 years, Crusoe lives in constant fear of a confrontation with the cannibals, though no direct threat arises during this time. Finally, Crusoe witnesses a group of natives arrive on the island, bringing with them several prisoners. From a hidden vantage point, Crusoe watches as they prepare to kill and eat their captives. Crusoe, horrified by the scene, debates whether to intervene. Though initially hesitant, he eventually decides to take action when one of the prisoners manages to escape and runs toward him for protection. The rescue of Friday. Crusoe shoots several of the cannibals and rescues the fleeing prisoner, whom he names Friday, after the day of the week on which he was saved. Friday, a native of the Caribbean region, becomes Crusoe's companion and servant. Crusoe teaches him English, educates him in Christianity, and instructs him in the ways of European civilization. This relationship is deeply symbolic, reflecting the European colonial mindset of the time. Crusoe sees himself as a civilizer, bringing enlightenment and order to the savage Friday, while Friday remains loyal and subservient to Crusoe. However, the dynamic between Crusoe and Friday is more complex than a simple master-servant relationship. Over time, Friday becomes not only Crusoe's assistant, but also his friend. The companionship that Friday provides helps alleviate the crushing loneliness that Crusoe has endured for so many years. Together, they defend the island from further incursions by the cannibals, and Friday helps Crusoe rescue his father, who is among a group of captives brought to the island by the natives. Rescue and return to England. After years of living on the island, Crusoe's long isolation comes to an end when an English ship arrives. The ship's crew has mutinied, and the captain is being held hostage by the rebellious sailors. Crusoe, seeing an opportunity to both escape the island and help the captain, devises a plan to retake the ship. With the help of Friday and the loyal crew members, they overpower the mutineers and regain control of the ship. In gratitude, the captain offers Crusoe and Friday passage back to England. Crusoe's return to England is bittersweet. He discovers that his parents have died, and the world he once knew has changed dramatically. However, he learns that his Brazilian plantation has prospered in his absence, making him a wealthy man. Crusoe travels to Portugal to claim his earnings and considers retiring from his adventurous life. He marries and lives quietly for a time, but after his wife's death, his restless spirit returns. Crusoe's story ends with the suggestion that he will once again set sail for new adventures, unable to fully abandon the life of exploration and adventure that has defined him. Crusoe's restlessness and new adventures. Despite his wealth and comfort in England, Robinson Crusoe finds it difficult to fully reintegrate into society. The years of solitude and survival on the island have changed him profoundly. His desire for adventure is rekindled after the death of his wife, and Crusoe begins to contemplate new voyages. His wealth, gained from the plantation in Brazil, provides him with the means to fund further explorations, and he feels drawn to the world beyond England's shores once more. Crusoe's thoughts often drift back to his island. He feels a strange attachment to the place where he had been marooned for so long. This attachment isn't merely nostalgic, but speaks to the sense of mastery and self-sufficiency he developed there. It's as though the island, where he once ruled alone, remains the only place where he truly felt at peace, free from the complexities of civilization. Crusoe's return to the island. Years after leaving the island, Crusoe finally decides to return, motivated by both curiosity and a lingering sense of responsibility. He wishes to see how the island has fared in his absence and to check on the well-being of the Spaniards and other prisoners he had rescued before leaving. When Crusoe arrives, he finds the island transformed. The Spaniards have created a small but thriving community, complete with homes, cultivated land, and domesticated animals. They have formed peaceful relations with the neighboring native tribes, and the island is no longer the wild and untamed place Crusoe had once known. Crusoe is struck by the contrast between the thriving society on the island and the loneliness he endured during his years of isolation. The community that has grown in his absence is a testament to human cooperation and the ability to create civilization, even in the most remote corners of the world. Crusoe, however, feels somewhat like an outsider, no longer the undisputed master of the island. His role has shifted from that of a lone ruler to a visitor among equals. New adventures in Southeast Asia. After a brief stay on the island, Crusoe continues his journey, setting his sights on Southeast Asia. His travels take him to regions filled with new challenges, exotic landscapes, and different cultures. Crusoe's experiences in this part of the world introduce him to the complexities of trade, colonialism, and diplomacy. He engages in trade between the islands of Southeast Asia, amassing even more wealth. However, his adventures also expose him to new dangers, including pirate attacks and conflicts with local rulers. Crusoe's journey through Southeast Asia reflects his evolving character. In his earlier years, he sought adventure purely for personal gain, but now he is more reflective, considering the ethical implications of his actions. He begins to question the European practice of exploiting foreign lands and people, and his encounters with different cultures challenge many of his previously held beliefs. This internal conflict marks a significant change in Crusoe's character. No longer just the self-centered adventurer, he becomes more aware of the broader consequences of European colonization and trade. Crusoe's final return to England. After years of wandering, Crusoe finally returns to England for good. Now, in his later years, he reflects on the many stages of his life: his rebellious youth, his enslavement, his time on the island, and his subsequent adventures. Crusoe is a changed man, no longer driven solely by the need for wealth or excitement. He has gained wisdom and a deeper understanding of the world and his place in it. Though he still holds a deep affection for his island, Crusoe decides not to return there again. He recognizes that the island has moved on without him, and so has he. Instead, he settles into a quieter life in England, enjoying the fruits of his labor and contemplating the legacy of his extraordinary life. Crusoe spends his final years writing down the story of his adventures, which eventually become the narrative of the novel. His reflections are filled with both pride and regret as he considers the consequences of his actions, both the good and the bad. He is proud of his ability to survive and thrive, yet he is also haunted by the moral compromises he made, such as his involvement in the slave trade and his initial treatment of Friday. Themes of redemption and reflection. As Crusoe reflects on his life, the theme of redemption becomes central to his story. His years of solitude on the island were not just a physical challenge, but a spiritual one. Crusoe interprets his survival as a sign of divine providence, believing that God guided and protected him throughout his ordeals. His repentance for past sins, such as disobeying his father and engaging in morally questionable pursuits, provides Crusoe with a sense of peace in his later years. Another theme that emerges in Crusoe's final reflections is the importance of self-reliance. Crusoe's experiences, especially during his time on the island, have taught him the value of independence and resourcefulness. His ability to build a life from nothing on the island is a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Yet, at the same time, Crusoe acknowledges the limits of self-reliance. His relationships with Friday and the Spaniards show that even the most independent individuals need companionship and community. The legacy of Crusoe's story. As Crusoe grows older, he becomes increasingly aware of his legacy. His story is not just one of adventure, but also one of transformation. Crusoe's journey from a naive, rebellious youth to a reflective and wise older man mirrors the universal human experience of growth and change. His story serves as both a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride and recklessness and an inspiring example of resilience and survival against all odds. Crusoe's final years are spent in quiet contemplation, far from the excitement of his earlier life. He leaves behind a written record of his adventures, ensuring that his story will be passed down to future generations. His tale of survival, faith, and redemption becomes a symbol of the human spirit's ability to endure and overcome even the most difficult challenges. Final reflections. Crusoe's story ultimately explores the intersection of adventure, survival, faith, and morality. His transformation from a young man driven by greed and excitement into an older, more reflective figure symbolizes the journey many individuals take in their own lives. Crusoe's adventures are thrilling, but it is his internal journey, his struggle with loneliness, fear, and guilt, that makes his story timeless and deeply human. In the end, Robinson Crusoe is not just a tale of adventure, but a meditation on what it means to be human. It explores the tension between civilization and nature, isolation and community, and pride and humility. Crusoe's life may have been filled with extraordinary events, but his deepest journey is one of self-discovery and redemption.